Mac Games and Comics. Check them out on Facebook and visit their site at merrymacgames.com.
What's up YouTube, Evan from Epic Duel Time here, doing a commentary on another Duel video for you guys. This week we have two members of Epic Duel Time playing different variations on the Dragon Ruler deck. We have Eric B on the left piloting a Blue Eyes version, and Chris LeBlanc on the right playing a Dragunity Dragon Ruler deck. So we're seeing head-to-head two decks that are incredibly popular in the meta right now, and we're seeing tons and tons of play. So it'll be a good comparison. So we've got Eric on the left opens up with a Dragon's Ravine. He pitches a White Stone and drops Tidal from his deck. And then off the White Stone, he gets his Blue Eyes. He then activates Cards of Consonance, pitching another White Stone, letting him draw 2 cards. And then he's going to activate that White Stone's effect to get another Blue Eyes. What this is going to allow him to do is to open up the amount of dragons that he can have as soon as possible. Any of these dragons can be banished for a Dragon Ruler. When they're in the banish zone, they can be used off of a Return of the Different Dimension or a Different Dimension Reincarnation, all sorts of different plays. So Eric then follows up by just setting 2 back row and ending. For Chris's turn, he's going to Cards of Consonance as well, and he's going to pitch a Dragunity Phalanx. He's then going to use a 7 Sword to draw 2 cards, banishing a Redox. And then he's going to activate the Redox's effect to search. Just searching out another Redox. So in behavior, these decks are almost alike. They both have tuner monsters that need to be pitched, but what they do from then on is completely different. Chris is going to really rely on the Dragunities themselves to be able to generate a ton of advantage. So he's first going to normal summon Dragunity Ducks, and obviously he has that Phalanx in the grave to bring back with it. So in response to the summon, it's going to get Book of Moon. And that's going to keep Chris from being able to capitalize on a ton of explosive plays. It's going to slow down the speed by which he can generate card advantage. From there, he's going to activate his own Dragon's Ravine, destroying Eric's and putting into play his own, which is going to now mean that he can set up, again, just like Eric just did, more individual plays to be able to start generating a flow of dragons to the graveyard. Again, once you start at least get all 4 different dragons in the graveyard, you have a ton of options that are opened up for you the instant all 4 are in the graveyard, let alone 2 to 3 dragons in the graveyard. So, but he's going to use a different effect of Ravine. Remember that Ravine has 2 effects. He's going to pitch Blaster from his hand and search out Dragunity Ducks. Remember the Dragon Ravine is actually is the field spell card for Dragunities. Most Dragon players just happen to use it just because you can drop tons of dragons. It's a slower version of Painful Choice, really. So it helps. And he's going to be able to assist his consistency with it. Now, for Eric's turn, he's activating Redox's effect, banishing Tidal and a Tempest from his graveyard. And he's going to trigger both of their effects, searching Dragunity Corseska and a Tidal. Decks that run field spells generally, more often than not, use them or hold them to really destroy the opponents, and they don't generally last particularly long, not more than 2 to 3 turns at a time. So Eric normal summons his Corseska and synchros it with Redox to create a Crimson Blader. Also in matches like this, whoever makes the Crimson Blader first generally has the advantage. Eric's looking to get that early game advantage. He declares the attack with Crimson Blader. It destroys Dragunity Ducks, which will then activate that Crimson Blader's effect. During the end phase, Chris uses Reckless Greed, which on his next turn will bring the countdown to 1. He then activates an Upstart Goblin, giving Eric 1,000 life points. So now it minimizes the amount of turns that he has to wait for Reckless Greed. He then uses the 7-star sword, or 7 swords of star. I forget the order of those words. But then he banishes the Tempest and searches out off of the Tempest Dragunity Mistletoe. Obviously after drawing 2 cards, of course. From here, we're going to use Dragon's Ravine effect to pitch a dragon. I didn't quite see which. I want to say it's a Blaster for a Tempest. And what we're really seeing is Chris setting up a ton of dragon cards in his graveyard, so that when he's not under Crimson Blader's effect, he's going to be able to go off in a really explosive way. He sets up 3 back rows and ends, and now he brings us to Eric's turn. Eric, having a Crimson Blader and being at 9,000 life points, would really hint at the fact that Eric's controlling the game, but what we're seeing is that Chris really has a lot more resources at hand. He is the one with the Ravine on the field. That generally is a good sign of the winner of the game, is who's going to be holding that Ravine longer. Remember that the longer Chris holds that Ravine, it's going to mean that he can continuously create a steady stream of dragons to his graveyard and dragons to be able to summon, giving him options, synchro plays, Xyz plays, or just beating with the dragons. Remember that these dragons are very, very large, tons of attack points, so sometimes it's just simpler to just attack with the dragon. So now we're going to see Eric using the effect of the title in hand to banish the Tempest and a White Stone. He's going to search for the Tempest. Searching yet another Tempest. Having already searched his Corseska, of course. It's safe to assume in this build that Eric's not running multiple copies of Corseska. He then banishes both the Blue Eyes White Dragons in his hand for the Redox. He declares a direct attack with both the title and the Redox, which is going to reduce Chris's life down to 3,800, and a final attack is going to be declared with the Crimson Blader, where Chris will respond with Raigeki Break, pitching a Dragunity Phalanx from his hand to destroy the Crimson Blader. Now we're going to see Eric overlay the Redox and the title to summon Mecha Phantom Beach Draco Sack, but Chris has the answer to it. He's going to compulse the monster, and it's going to go back to the extra deck, dropping the materials into the grave, and that's going to really reduce Eric's field down to just his 1 back row, and even with 9,000 life points, it's still not going to really stand up much. However, when Chris goes to summon that Dux and get the Phalanx back, Eric did have the Vanity's Emptiness, which is going to keep that Phalanx from being able to be special summon itself from the equip zone. So a direct attack for 1900 is basically all Chris is really going to be able to follow up with. Vanity's Emptiness is a tricky card. If you don't have the out to it instantly, it's going to really be a pain. It is less effective against the Dragunity build than just regular Dragon Rulers, solely because Dux, Phalanx, they all still are monsters, and they all still work together, and then they don't need to be special summoned. So what Chris is going to do next is he's going to search off Ravine and get a Dux, and he's going to normal summon the Dux. And both of these Ducks are at 2,300. So quite a few attack points on them. Remember that each Dux gets 200 attack points for each additional Dragunity monster on the field. So they're each getting an additional 800 points. So when Chris goes to attack, Eric's going to Raigeki break his ducks, which is going to reduce the attack of the second ducks, but also killing the Vanity's Emptiness because he sent a card to the graveyard. From there, on his main phase 2, Chris is going to use Phalanx's effect to summon itself. Eric has the Max C to chain to its effect. And now Chris is left with his Phalanx and his ducks. Eric is just down to 600 life points, so we're going to hope that whatever card he drew from Max C is going to support him. Chris sets his face down and ends. So right now what we're seeing is how the fact that Dragon's Ravine is so influential, that it's so game-changing. It's providing Chris with a consistent source of monsters. He wouldn't have had any of those monsters if it weren't for the Ravine. I mean, we're looking at a really consistent stream of monsters. Next, we're going to see Eric banish a Blaster for his 7 sword, getting a Flamvel Guard after drawing 2 cards. And his options in Grave are limited. He's going to use Redox's effect, banishing a White Stone into Corseska to summon the Redox in defense mode. He's going to normal summon his Flamvel Guard. He's going to synchro the 2 monsters. And summon a Crimson Blader. So Eric's running 2 Crimson Bladers in this. And again, Crimson Blader is that good. It is that strong of a card. It's probably a really safe thing that this card was only a rare, seeing as how just completely game-stopping this card can be. So helpful that a card like that wasn't held aside as a expensive foil of some sort. So really ready access for most decks to be able to play one. And the card is just as good as it is. It's a card that allows you to quickly control the game, turn card advantage into dead cards pretty quickly, and if you can swarm around it, you can really push for the game. So we see a title activating its effect. Summon. I banished off a Tempest, which off that was searched to Debris. That Debris will become relevant later on, hopefully if Eric gets a chance to play it. So if Chris goes into some sort of Synchro monster, Eric will have a real inherent out. Being able to revive his Max C that's in Grave, Synchro off into an Orient Dragon, and being able to banish will really push him into the final stages of the game if he can start landing some attacks. And he can't, because he goes to attack with the Crimson Blader and it gets Book of Moon. However, that title is going to land an attack, but on what? What we're seeing here is he's going to actually attack the Phalanx. I think he changes targets, excuse me. I think he changes his mind on that. I think I didn't edit this out. So his conflict right now is that if he attacks the Phalanx, he removes the last tuner off the board. But in that case, how many more Duxes does Chris have? At this point, that was the last one. So that puts, and he can score some damage. So attacking over the Phalanx, I might have been the better play. Not too sure. I think getting that tuner off the board would have been a little more essential than attacking the Ducks. But he did what he did. And then from there, he's going to activate a Different Dimension Reincarnation, sending a title from his hand. And what he's really pushing to do is get some sort of field stability on the board. Whether or not he can, it's kind of going to be seen. The problem we're seeing is that every time Eric goes to push into some sort of control position where he can limit the amount of things Chris can do, Chris saves his best cards to be able to counteract that situation. So whether it's Crimson Bladers being played, Chris is holding his cards because he knows how devastating Crimson Blader can be. He's willing to take direct damage. He's willing to do things. He's not going to leave a monster just for Crimson Blader to kill. That's going to break his win condition in a grind game where you can't summon your best cards. It's going to really break Chris's ability to be able to set up his board, so he's letting things happen. But Eric's desperately trying to grab onto some sort of board stability. And what we're seeing is, once again, he goes and summons the blaster off the DDR, and then overlays the title and the blaster to make a Mecha Phantom Beast Draco Sack, and it gets overwarninged. So we're seeing that Chris isn't letting up on any part of putting pressure on Eric's plays. And if you look, Chris has a very, very full graveyard. He's run low on his Dragunity cards, but remember that they're all wins so that they can all be banished for Tempest Summon. Tempest isn't a very small dragon. He's 2400. That's pretty decent. Next, he's going to use his Dragon's Ravine, pitching what I assumed was a blaster in his hand. It's right where the edge of the camera cut off. But now this is just Dragon's Ravine at this point becomes its full embodiment of a win condition. So we see a Redox get dropped. That was a blaster from earlier. That was sent for the Ravine. So now he's set up all of his dragons really in his graveyard to be able to kind of push and start clenching the game a little bit. So another 2 dragons are banished for the summon of Redox. And he overlays the 2 to make Draco Sack. He's going to detach an Xyz material to summon 2 tokens. And remember, so then he's going to use Draco Sack's effect, attributing itself and not one of its tokens. He doesn't really want it on the board anymore. And he's going to target Eric's back row for destruction. However, it was a return from a different dimension. This is where this play actually goes a little wrong. In this position, it doesn't really matter what Eric does, but activating the return isn't the best play. He only has 300 life points when he does something like that. So what ends up happening is he summons, he has to summon as many dragons as possible. He doesn't get to control how many he summons. So he has a defense position, Crimson Blader. He has 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons, and what he has to summon is all he has in his banish zone for bigger dragons is a Tidal. He doesn't want to summon a White Stone Legend. And he has a Tempest. And at this point, he's under the impression that Chris has a way into a Gaia Dragon, so that if you were to summon them in defense position, it wouldn't advantage him. But remember that the difference between a Crimson Blader's attack and a Tempest's attack is 400, so by just summoning Crimson Blader or Scrap Dragon, or even if he had a Thought Ruler, it does seal the game. Chris then goes and activates the effect. He was about to summon the blaster, and then realized that it's quite simple just to attack for the game. Eric thought that he had some sort of a way into a Gaia Dragon. I don't think he did, but not this turn. So maybe it might have been better to throw that Tempest up in defense mode. And actually, anything but the Blue Eyes might have been better in defense mode. But these are kind of the choices and things you have to think about. Return has a hefty cost, and even though it only took away 300 life points, the last 300 were really the numbers that he needed. Getting over that Crimson Blader might not have happened, but it did kind of clinch the game for Chris to be able to push with Blader for game. So that was game 1, and now we're going to enter our game 2. So Eric's first going to start off with Dragon's Ravine again, and he's going to pitch a Tempest in the hand and a Tidal from the deck. So again, starting off with Ravine, you're going to see the majority of Dragon decks right now trying to get Ravines faster. Builds are running Terraforming just to get to their Ravines faster, and it's that consistent, it's that good. Anyone who says that Ravine is overhyped is, I'm afraid, a little bit misinformed. This card is that good. Chris's wins are in this game are because of this, of being able to consistently use Ravine. So Eric sets 2 back row and ends, and for Chris's turn, he starts activating Upstart Goblins. This is a thinning mechanism. Again, it's going to get him to the cards he needs faster. So we're pushing Eric to 10,000 life points. And then Chris is going to use a 7 sword, drawing 2 cards, banishing his blaster. And he's going to use the blaster's effect. Searching out yet another blaster. And then a third Upstart Goblin is played, so he must have drawn into it, bringing Eric's total to 11,000 life points. And you might say that that's kind of reckless to be doing that, and honestly, I think it's perfectly appropriate. Look at the kind of playstyle that we're seeing right now. We're seeing Chris thinning through his deck incredibly quickly. He's getting to his combo pieces, every single one that he needs. He just has got a Dragon's Ravine, blows up Eric's Dragon's Ravine, drops a blaster, and then searches out a Phalanx. Look, now he has cards of Consonance to drop that Phalanx in the grave. So he's drawing 2. Where does that Phalanx need to be? The graveyard. That's exactly where he wants it. And he has the Dragunity Ducks. This play has played out perfectly for Chris in every sense of the word. Ducks' effect activates, getting the Phalanx. Phalanx is going to activate, and Eric's is going to chain a Maxi. But at this point, Chris wants to set that board up hard. He wants to really strengthen his board, give it some backbone. So he's going to Synchro play through the Maxi just a tiny bit, and he's going to go for Dragunity Guideric. Not a lot of people know what this card does, unless you really play the Dragunity build. What you do is, once per turn, you can search out a winged beast, or a level 4 or lower winged beast or dragon. And when you do, afterwards, you have to pitch a dragon or a winged beast from your hand to the graveyard. But that's great, because that means more dragons in Chris's graveyard, and he's getting the cards he wants. So he actually searched out a DD Crow, which he's sided in for the game too. Next, he's going to activate Gold Sarcophagus. That's going to banish the Tempest. He'll get that in 2 turns, and off Tempest effect, he's going to get a Dragunity Phalanx. So we're seeing that that 11,000 life points isn't seeming so big now. And Chris had another Cards of Consonance, and that's why he searched out his Phalanx. So now he has 2 Phalanx in grave, and all the cards in the world in his hand. He's going to attack directly, bringing Eric's total down to 8,600. He has, I think, about 5 or 6 dragons in his graveyard, a very full hand, a strong monster on the board, and he's got some amazing centric plays all around that ravine. That ravine is exactly what's going to define this format in terms of dragon decks. We're going to see dragon players using this as much and as often as possible. Their decks are built to play this card. With the babies gone, a significant discarding outlet and thinning outlet for the deck has kind of passed away, so now we need to find a better way of doing this. And Ravine in the Dragunity build is just obscene. It's just amazing. There's so much synergy to be had. It almost works Duel. This card works so well, and it was printed almost 2 years ago, I believe, if not 2 years ago. So we're seeing some great synergy with these cards. Next on for Eric's turn, he's going to summon a Redox by banishing a Maxi and a Tempest. From here, Chris knows that Eric's looking to go into Crimson Blader, so he chains a Maxi to that Redox to draw a card. He wants to draw as many cards before the Crimson Blader hits the board as possible, looking for a potential out to that Crimson Blader if his back row isn't one already. Again, he has no interest in playing under a Crimson Blader any longer than he needs to. So, Eric normal summons the Corseska that he searched off of banishing the Tempest, and then goes into a Crimson Blader. Just as Chris said, on the attack declaration, Chris is going to compulse that Crimson Blader again. So now Eric's committed to that play. Chris drew 2 cards for the Maxi, so it ended up being a +1 for him, and he compulses the Crimson Blader, getting the biggest threat off the board. And we're seeing a wide open field, a Guideric that has a once per turn effect, and a hefty graveyard on Chris's side. We're seeing some really strong opposition to Eric's field. However, Eric has back rows, so he's going to set another 2. This means that what Chris is about to do is he's going to have to force his way through 4 back rows to try to score some more damage on a player that he just gave 3,000 life points to. Yeah, it seems a bit uphill, but for those of you who know better, you know that what Chris is about to do is he's going to do the best he can. So in terms of being able to push through all these back rows and gain more field advantage, that advantage is going to really define what it is he's about to try to accomplish. So a 7 sword is going to banish a Redox. Remember that Tempest comes back next turn. A Redox is searched off the Redox. And then we're going to see Gaiderg activating its effect, searching out a Dux and dropping a Redox. Dragunity Dux is summoned, and Dragunity Phalanx is equipped. Phalanx is going to activate its effect, summon itself, a Synchro. And we're going to see Dragunity Knight Vajrayana. And from here, Eric's trying to decide if it's worth responding to that Vajrayana and avoiding Chris's future plays, so he's going to. He's going to Book of Moon the Vajrayana so that it doesn't get its effect to equip a monster. We also can see in Chris's hand he's got an Electric Virus, that DD Crow. He has some great cards that he's been siding in for this match. So whatever Eric does get on the board isn't going to last long, and it isn't going to go unpunished. So Chris has really set the graveyard perfectly for this, but now he's just trying to kind of carefully plan out the rest of it. So he's using Dragon's Ravine to pitch his Redox, but a Chained MST prevents that from resolving. And then Chris is going to use Dragunity Knight Mistletoe to send the Gaiderg to the graveyard. Mistletoe will equip the Phalanx, but in response to that, Vanity's Emptiness has been activated. And a direct attack for 2100 from the Mistletoe is going to bring Eric's life down to 65. Chris is going to set one more card in this turn. Vanity's Emptiness has become really and one of the defining cards of this format. We're seeing so many players are using this, siding it, doing whatever they can to involve that card in their deck, because it is that good. It is like Dragon's Ravine right now. It is so consistent and so helpful. It gets off the board when you want it. So in ways it's kind of a scary royal oppression, because you're using it and you can stop it because you'll just send one of your cards to the graveyard. So Eric's going to set 2 cards and end his turn. It's looking like he's not drawing into any of his combo pieces. One of the big factors of this is that he doesn't have his Ravine. As I've said, for anyone who disagrees with the idea that Ravine is as good as people say it is, that it's better than people say it is the deciding factor in this game. And even though Chris doesn't have the Ravine on the field right now, it's already done the damage. The damage is there. It's already done. Look, he has another one in his hand. So he's 7-sworded, and then got into a Terraforming. Got in the Ravine. Searching out a Dux. We're seeing plenty of uses of these cards in pretty hefty ways. Dux is going to activate its effect, getting back Phalanx. Remember, Dux is going to get 200 points for every single Dragunity monster on the field, including the flipped face-up Dragunity Knight Vajrayana. So Dux is at 25, Mistletoe at 21, and Vajrayana at 19. Yes, a combined attack of all 3 monsters is exactly 6,500 points of damage. This is what Chris needs to score the game. And you can see in his hand, he doesn't need much more. He has plenty of cards. So what's going to happen is, on entering the battle phase, Eric's going to use Raigeki Break to destroy that Dux and reduce the amount of damage that he's going to have to take this turn, because a combined attack from Vajrayana and that Mistletoe is going to bring Eric down to 2,500, losing 4,000 points of life. Half his life gone in so quickly. But that Raigeki Break does clear out the Vanity's Emptiness, which for the main phase 2, Chris is going to take advantage of using his Phalanx's effect to summon itself. From there, Scrap Dragon summoned, popping the Mistletoe, popping the Vanity's Emptiness. For people wondering why he didn't just flip up the Vanity's Emptiness on to the Phalanx, he didn't want to top deck some sort of a dragon or a summon card and not be able to utilize it and lock himself out of being able to play it. So he does have a legitimate reason for not wanting to emptiness. Is one direct attack from Scrap Dragon's game, so he doesn't really want to lock himself out of options. However, his graveyard is not strong enough to be able to handle itself on its own. There's not enough dragons. All he has is a Redox, a Corseska, and the card he just drew is a Blue Eyes White Dragon. The bane of the Blue Eyes deck is that you can dead draw those Blue Eyes, and it's not always the most helpful thing in the world. And that's the match. Last video's pack giveaway winner was Phantom Python. If you want to have a chance to win a pack of Number Hunters and an Epic Duel Time deck box decal, there are 3 simple things you gotta do. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment with an answer to our question of the week. This week's question is, with the legendary collection Joey's World spoiled, showing many reprints as well as OCG imports such as Sixth Sense, Heartbeat Dancer, and a plethora of older OCG normal monsters from early in the game's history, what cards were you most excited about to see in this set and why? As always, like, comment, subscribe, and keep dueling, America.